Hi, good morning, everybody. We're just about on 10 o'clock, so let's get started with our next installment in the grade 10 IT episode. Just to remind you, this is grade 10 Information Technology, and my name is Corinne Anderson. Welcome to you all. Right, so what are we looking at today? Today, we're going to look at variable scope, a very important concept that you need to be sure that you understand. We're going to look at the concept of initialization and carrying on from that, teaching, and I've put it in inverted commas, your program to count. And then we're going to add one last thing, hopefully, if we get there, using #10 to go to the next line. Right, so let's get started. So variables are either local or non-local. So when you declare a variable, you declare it to either be local or you declare it to be non-local. Now, a local variable is when you declare it in a specific event. So, for example, the on-click event of a button, you are going to declare the variable there, and that is where it lives. It is not visible, it is not accessible anywhere else but inside that particular event. A non-global, yes, somebody said global, another term for it is global, yes. Although there's a little bit of a distinction, but for your purposes, yes, you can refer to them as global as well. A non-local variable is a variable that is declared and used in all of the events of a unit. So when you create a program and you declare a non-local variable, then the on-click event of a button and the on-mouse move event of a image and the on-activate event of the form can all access the contents of that particular variable. Okay, so if we have a look at an example here, this is an example of a program where two local variables have been declared, okay? And the important thing to take note here is that a local variable loses its contents at the end of an event. So as soon as my code hits this red end over here, R Fortnite and R Minecraft are emptied. They don't contain their whatever it was that was put inside them in the code. They only live within this IMG Minecraft's click event. Okay. On the other hand, when my PowerPoint presentation cooperates, this is now a global or non-local variable. So if you look very carefully, where you will find this is if you have to scroll all the way to the top of your unit, you find the word private and you declare your variables under private. When you declare the variables under private, they keep their contents up to that all-important end with a full stop at the end of your program. And I obviously didn't have enough space on my PowerPoint presentation to show you that all of the code is here in between these two screenshots. So after implementation comes all the code of my program, and these variables here are visible and usable to every single event between these two blocks over here. Okay, so that's now the difference between non-local. Please take note that you don't type a var. Okay, so Callum's asked a question. So we use it if we need to use a variable throughout the programming. Yes, because if you declared, if I took, good question, Callum, if I took I count and I declared it in the on-click event of my button, and I declared it again in the on-activate event of my form, my program will see those as two completely different variables. There will be absolutely no correlation between the two of them, because the one in the on-activate event is going to basically die at the end of the onActivate event, and then a new one is created in the onClick event. So yes, as soon as you need to access a variable in more than one event, you are going to declare it under private. And as I started saying just now, note there's no var required when you declare it under private. You just declare your variables like you would in your button or whatever, but without the VAR. Okay. Right, so non-local variables or global variables are declared under private. You don't need a var, and they are often used when we need to use variables to count. Okay, so now we're going to look at a simple example in Delphi. So a Delphi program that uses and explains this concept, and it's very simple. Okay. Or Untitled, you've asked, wouldn't it be more efficient to put all your variables under private? Absolutely not. It's actually the opposite of efficient. And I'm so glad you've asked this question. I'm sure your teachers have taught you sorry, Ruben, I see you asking about volume. I'm assuming other people can hear me. Okay, all right. So Callum's giving an advice. Okay, so Jared's got volume, good, so I can carry on. Okay, so back to my question. When you declare a variable, space is made available in your RAM. Maybe turn up the volume. So for every variable that you declare, you are creating space in your RAM. Now, if you declare non-local or global variables under private, then every single one of those variables is taking up space in your RAM while your program is running. Whereas a local variable is going to only take up space in the RAM while that specific event is running. So you don't want to find, and I know that in our classrooms, we're not really filling up the RAM with whatever variables we use, but it's basically, and you'll see I've put it in my presentation later, it is bad programming. Okay, my classes hear me say that a lot. It's bad programming to have your computer taking up resources in the RAM for no particular reason. If you've got a variable that's only used in one event, then you mustn't make it available to the entire program for the entire time that that program is running. Okay, so yes, it would be easier because you wouldn't really have to think about it, but it's not a good idea. Okay, bad programming, remember that. So, bad dog. Okay, let's have a look at this program. Okay, so this is now my example program. So I've got code a program that allows the user to repeatedly click a button to enter numbers to be added together into a dialog box. See that? I've put that word in again, and hopefully from yesterday, you know what I'm talking about when I say it. The program must also keep a count of how many numbers have been entered so far. So every time the user clicks on the count on by button, they're going to enter a number which is going to be added to the total. The program's also going to go, okay, that was one number, that was two numbers, that was three numbers as it counts. Then I need to display the latest number that's been entered in P&L new num. I need to display the total so far in P&L answer, which is this one. You see I've shown you here. And when the user moves their mouse over P&L av, which is this blue one here, the average amount that's been calculated must be displayed in LBL av. Now, I've cleared the caption of this label, so that's why I've put the screenshot with the dot so you can see where the label is. Code the reset button to clear all the components and variable values. So let's have a look at what the program looks like in its final state. So into Delphi, run my program, and this is what it looks like. If I click on my count on by button and I type 6 and I either press enter or I click OK, both panels now hold the value of 6. If I click the button again, it's going to ask me for my next number. So let's say I put in 9 and I press enter. Now what it's done is it's showing me what 6 plus 9 is over here, and it's put 9 as the most recent number. If I click the button again and I put in 5 and I press enter, my total of all the numbers is displayed, and just this, the most recent one, is displayed here. Then if I just want to display the average, remember the instruction was if I move the mouse over the panel, it must display the average. So as soon as I move my mouse over, it says the average is 6.67. So what's it done? It's counted every time I've entered a new number, and it's used the total to work out the average. And then finally, my reset button clears everything. Okay, so that's my program. Now let's have a look, whoopsie, wrong one, at what is involved in actually getting there. Let's have a look at the logic. Remember what I said to you. It's very, very important that you think about what is the logic behind this. In order to tell the computer what to do, you need to be sure that you know. Okay, so this is the code for the on-click event of that count button. So the only thing that I have declared, the only variable that I've declared in the on-click event of the count button is a variable called iStart. Okay, and iStart gets the value of, remember I said dialog box, so there it is, there's my input box with my 3 arguments. Nothing in the last one because I haven't put a default value in. That's my input. My processing looks like this, and I'm going to explain it in more detail just now. Sorry, it's rubbish day, so every Thursday we're going to have dogs barking in the background. So total is going to get the value of what's already in total plus start. So remember, start is the number that we entered into the input box. So the total is going to get what's already in total plus the new number that's just been added. And this here is how my computer counts. So my computer counts by going, I count gets the value of what's already in I count plus 1. Okay, and if you think about it, like I said, think about your logic. When you are counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going to show you just now just how we actually do it without even realizing it. And then my output is just to output I start and I total. Yes, to a certain extent it is y plus 1. But remember, we don't use y, we use I count. Okay, right, so let's have a look at, without even realizing it, yes, ink is easier, definitely, Vian, but I wasn't sure that everybody had been taught ink I count, so that was why I did it this way, but you are 100% correct. Okay, let's have a look. Yes, Ruben, exactly. Don't worry, I'll put it in another clip, or I'll look at it just now if we've got time. So here I have a table with a series of numbers. So let's say, for example, your teacher in primary school said to you, you have to add up these numbers. Now, what we as a matter of course do is, when you're told to add a whole lot of numbers, where do you start from? Because you got to start somewhere. Okay, even if I said to you, start counting, and you went to me 1, 2, 3, 4, and I went, no, that's it, you fail because you weren't supposed to start at 1. I'm misleading you. But as a matter of course, under normal circumstances, we start at 0. Okay, so 0 is where we start when we start adding numbers. We don't know it, but our computer needs to be told it. Then what do? Do you even really think about it? You just add the numbers together. But what do you actually do? You start with the first 2 and you say, right, 0 plus 5 equals 5. Then you take that 5 and you add it to the 6 to give yourself the new total. Then you take that total and you add 2 to give you 13. Then you take that total and you add 7, the new number, to give you 20. And then finally, you add 20 and the new number 10, and you end up with your final answer of 30. Okay, so if you analyze it, that's how you add numbers together. So therefore, when you are teaching your program to add numbers together, that's the philosophy that you have to use. And I'm just, oops, let's rather do it this way. Okay, so that's what my computer does. It says iTotal must get what's already in iTotal, that was those bracket numbers, plus iStart, which is the new number. Okay, and iCount gets the value of iCount plus 1, which we've already discussed. So what's in iTotal and iCount the first time the program runs? Now, we've already discussed that if you're adding numbers together, you don't even realize it, but you start from 0. But I can't put iCount gets the value of 0 in this button. Why? Why can't I just put code in here that says, okay, iCount must start at 0 and iTotal must start at 0? Anybody got any ideas? Oh, are you all sleeping today? Okay, you're right about the form on activate, but because the count will always reset. Yes, well done. If I did it in the button, I'd go count gets 0, add 1. Click the button again, count gets 0, add 1. And so I'd go on and on and on. I'd never get higher than 1 for anything. So yes, savage. What I have to do is I have to put it into the onActivate event of the form. So again now, make sure that everybody who possibly hasn't seen this before understands it. As soon as you see this, in other words, what is this? This is the variable on both sides of the gets the value of symbol. This should be like an automatic thought process. I see iTotal gets the value of iTotal plus something. It means I have to initialize the variable. What does initialize mean? Oh, Cook Savage, I don't know what page it is. This is stuff that I've put together. So it's not really in your textbook. What does initialize mean? Set the var. I'd rather have a more English version, not declare, no. Declare is where you actually put it under the var, not enable, no. What does initial mean? And not with your letters. Okay, that's a better one. To start, to activate, yes, that's closer. To set the value, yes. To set the starting value. Okay, so initialize means give it a starting value. So if I was in my primary school class and I said to all the little children in front of me, count in 5s starting from 10. I am initializing their counting from 10. So to initialize a variable is to give it a starting value. Where must it start adding from? Where must it start counting from? Okay. And like we discussed, I cannot do that in the same button. So I have to initialize it in the onCreate or onActivate event of the form. And how do I initialize it? I set it to 0. So I say start counting from 0, start adding from 0. But now I have myself a situation, don't I? Because I'm referring to iTotal and iCount in the click of the button, and I'm referring to them in the onCreate. And it's the same one. I can't set count to 0 as a different count in onCreate, because then they won't see each other. So yes, savage. Finally, we get to the point of what I was explaining, and that is that both iCount and iTotal have to be declared under private. They have to be declared globally so that the entire program can see them. So I can set it to 0 when my program starts, and then I can add to them when I click the button. Okay, what's the difference between activate and on create? For our purposes, nothing. Okay, because it basically just executes code when the program loads. But generally out there in the real world, the onActivate event is supposed to be used if you add a second form to your program, and you would put code into the onActivate event of that second form. But for us, you just have to follow what's instructed in an activity or a test, because it's not really going to make much of a difference. Okay, how do you get to the private coding part? Excellent question, Sandra. So let's go back to Delphi. Here's my program. If I press F12 to switch, sorry, Delphi is not cooperating, F12 to get to my unit. And then I scroll all the way to the top. So remember all of this? There's the name, there's the users list. Remember we discussed adding date utils and math to the users list. Then we've got this type. There's all the components on my form. There's my events. And right here is the word private. And that's where I've declared my non-local or global variables. Okay, so they're completely separate from the whole rest of my program. Okay, so that's where they go if you're declaring them under private. Okay, right, so let's have a look at why we declared them under private. Because I had to initialize them in the onActivate event of the form. I then had to add to them in the onClick event of the button. Okay, it all depends on the data type, how much RAM a variable takes. I'm going to ask the question from my class, those of you who are here, because I have discussed this with you. How much RAM does one character take up? See how many of you have paid attention. Callum, no. A little bit, okay. So that's right, 8. No. 1 byte. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, 8 bits make 1 byte. So therefore, one character takes up 1 byte. And then your numbers are slightly different depending on how much space, but it's usually about 4 bytes for an integer. Okay, yes. All right, cool. So we've got a bit rusty now being in lockdown. Hey. Okay, so let's get back to our code here. So I've used iCount and iTotal. I showed you already in the onClick and onCreate event. The other place that I referred to them was in the mouse move event of my panel, because how do I create or calculate an average? I take the total number and I divide by how many numbers there were. The easiest way to remember this is when your teachers calculate your class average, they add everybody in the class's marks together, and then they divide by the number of people that were in that class. So here, I'm just adding a whole series of numbers together, and I'm dividing by how many numbers there were entered, and that's going to give me the average calculation. Okay. Right, so here's the thing again. I'm just going to now take you, we've looked at the code, but I want to take you through the actual event and the code. Okay, what do you mean by R current, Savage? I know what you're asking me there. Okay, so let's have a look at the Delphi program quickly. All right, so here's my form. Okay, there's my onClick event of the button. I wanted to show you in a previous lesson, I showed you that you can put an and symbol, or an ampersand as it's called, in front of the caption of a button, which means that I can then use a shortcut key to activate that button. Okay. Isn't what you use to calculate the average. It depends. The variable name is going to be what you choose. I chose RAV. Okay, I'll show you now. All right, so what I want to show you quickly is what I said to you. So I know you can't see it. Okay, what you should be able to see is that the focus is on the count on by button. You can't see that I'm not clicking my mouse, but I promise you I'm not. I am pressing Alt and C, and that pops up with my input box. So now let's use bigger numbers. I press Enter, and then I press Alt and C again, and it can pop up with another number and ask me, and so be it. So I didn't need to use my mouse to activate the button because of this and symbol that I added in the beginning here. Okay, now let's have a look. We've seen this, so it should be old hats. I read in the new number. I say total gets what's already in total plus the new number. I say count gets what's in count plus 1. But in order to do these two, I have to, when I find it, do this. Have to say, where must it start? I have to initialize. And I know you guys get confused between this, so I'm going to repeat myself. Initialize is this. Declare is this. Okay. All right, so Windows asked why +1, because that's counting. So every time I get a new number in, count goes up by 1, because what it's doing is it's autumn. Oh, okay, Sandra, I'll get to you. Okay. So every time a new number comes in, count goes up by 1. So when I type in 5, count gets 0 plus 1. So now I've added 1 number. The next time I add a number, let's say I type 7, then total goes to 5 plus 7, and count goes, okay, 1 plus 1 is 2. So that's how I count. And then somebody asked as well, and you know what, we may as well do it now. Another way of doing this is to say inc I count. Okay. These two lines of code do exactly the same thing. Okay, but be careful, please. Those of you who haven't done this yet, it looks very different to what you've seen before because there's no gets the value of. Okay, it just does it. Okay. All right. Then, Sandra, you asked how you set the focus. In this instance, the only reason why the focus is set to the button is because it's the first thing I added to the form. Okay, so the tab order is set to be on the button first. Okay, all right. Oh dear, Callum, Luke is asking that question again. Okay, all right, so yes, inc is a simpler way of doing it. Okay. So yes, right, so let's move on. Then my average, the average is declared locally and it's declared as real. Why? Why is the average declared as real? Come guys, I want one symbol, one word. Thank you, Savage. Because I am dividing, I have to have a real variable. Okay, yes, it is. Callum, you may as well just, I don't know, then people can't see it. I was going to say just put it at the beginning. But anyway, okay. Then the next thing that I want to show you is, remember I mentioned in my intro about moving something onto the next line. So if you look at my output code here, it says the average is, in inverted commas, plus #10 plus float to string f, rav, ffx 10-2. What this does is this. So once again, running my program, I'm going to just put some numbers in there. Okay, move my mouse over and you see that it says the average is, and the number 30 is on the line underneath it. Okay, so that is what the #10 does. It's adding, and I can use it in a rich edit as well. It puts what comes after it onto the next line. Okay, now one thing I haven't covered which I want to do with you, is the reset button. So now remember, the reset button needs to clear all of my outputs. And what else? Okay. Okay, sorry guys, you people are, okay, you know what? I wonder. Okay, Callum. Okay, all right. Yeah, okay, don't worry. I'm just, okay, you guys have got it now. Yes, thank you, EDP445. What do I have to do? I have to also reset my counter and what else? What else do I need to reset? The total, yes. I don't want to keep adding on to the program if I decide I want to start again. So what does the code in the reset button look like? I need to set I count and I total back to 0. So here's a little bit of a tip, okay? Generally, unless otherwise stated or required, whatever you happen to type in the onActivate or onCreate event of your form, you can just copy and paste into the reset buttons on click event. Okay. The difference between #10 and #13 is, for our purposes, nothing. Okay. One of them is the equivalent of pressing enter, and the other one is the equivalent of what they call a carriage return. Okay. So both of them do exactly the same thing. Okay. So either one can basically be used. I know that a while ago, examiners weren't allowing one of them, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Okay, please say the copying thing again. Okay. Generally, if you have a reset button in your program, whatever code you put in the onActivate event of the form can be copied and pasted into the reset button. Okay, so if there's anything that you've put in the onActivate event, you can copy and paste it into the reset. There may be a few exclusions, but in general, that's what's going to happen. The other thing that I just want to quickly cover with you guys. Okay. No, you can't. Okay, Marco, that's exactly what I was about to say. If we had an edit, I could say type edt num.clear. But a panel and a label do not have clear methods. I can't go P&L answer.clear. So instead, what do I have to do? I have to assign an empty string to the caption property of my panel and my label. And please, this is also important. Well, it's important to me. I am not assigning a space to the caption property. I am assigning an empty string. Okay, don't we use string to float in the beginning for the average? The average. Okay, I'll look at it, Nana. I don't think so, but Peter, that is awful, and I sincerely hope that my host is going to kick you off for that. Good grief. Right, so let's get back to our Delphi. So I have to assign an empty string to the caption property because a panel and a label do not have a clear method. Okay, I'm really sorry, but Peter's thrown me off. That's awful. Okay, so let's get back to your question, okay, which is now scrolled off. So I'm going to just have a look at it again. Don't we use string to float in the beginning for the average? Okay, no, because to calculate it, these are already integers. So this is I total and I count. They're already integers. Good, I'm glad. I hope the host kicked him off. These are already integers and they're going into a real because I'm dividing. So the only conversion I need is when I output to a string property. So from float, because that's what real is, to string formatted is going into the caption property of my label. Okay, right. Before I go back to PowerPoint, does anybody have any questions about this code? Is there anything you'd like me to show you? or explain further? Okay, so you're all happy with this. Okay, let's go back to PowerPoint. All right, so, okay, so Peter's logged in again and needs to be kicked out. Peter Starlings this time. Right. So we looked at the rules last, okay? Or we didn't, okay? But let's have a look at this. Yes, I'm sorry, this horrible boy has really thrown me off and it's not nice at all. Okay, thank you. Can I re-explain initializing? Okay, with pleasure. Okay, so initializing is important because in order to tell my program to count or to add to totals, I need to tell it where to start. I'm taking the ink out because it's easier to explain it this way. So here I'm saying iTotal gets the value of what's already in iTotal plus iStart. But the first time this button is clicked, the computer is going to think to itself, but what is already in iTotal? Okay. And often what can sometimes happen, okay, no, well, that one you're going to have to look on YouTube to see what you missed. Okay. Right. So, oh, you lot with your funny question. So iTotal, okay, how do you make it that it works by moving the mouse? Okay, excellent question. Let's do the initialization first. Okay, so iTotal gets what's already in iTotal. If I don't initialize iTotal, then Delphi may pick a random value to put into iTotal the first time round, which means that my program will not work correctly because it starts at the wrong place. So we always, whether it works or not, as a matter of course, then has to start, you initialize them. Okay, so as a matter of course, you always give it a starting value, and you'll see later. Okay. All right, if you don't know what an input box is, you can go and look at YouTube to find out. Okay. What is the value in iStart? That's the value you entered, yes. Okay, so you've got the input box that pops up and asks the user for a number. So whatever number they enter into the input box is then going to go into iStart. So total is going to get what's already in iTotal, which will be 0 the first time round, plus iStart. iCount is going to get what's already in iCount, which is 0 the first time round, plus 1. Okay, so that's how this works. Okay, so Savage and everybody's sending links. So I'm not sure if anybody's got any other questions. Yes, it has. Hey. Okay, you could initialize in a button or a label, yes, but generally what you want to do is you want it to be initialized when the program starts. That'll change when we start looking at loops, but for now, when the program starts, I want to start fresh. Let's start from 0. Okay, right, then somebody wanted to know how I get it to work on the on mouse move event. I selected my panel. I go into the Events tab on the Object Inspector. I scroll down until I found On Mouse Move, and then I double-click in this white space to get to the On Mouse Move. Okay, right. We're getting distracted again by Peter. Let's have a look at our tips. Okay, what do I mean by initializing? Giving a starting value. Okay, right, so no var is necessary under private. Do not declare a local variable and a non-local variable with the same name. So that's another important thing to go through. If I declared another iCount in the on-click event of my button, then it would use that iCount here and not the global one. Okay, initializing is important to get it a starting value. Only declare non-local variables. Somebody already asked me this. If you must, do not declare all of your variables as non-local or global, because this is bad programming. Okay, Don't do bad programming. Okay. All right, so Vian, initializing, it doesn't really break the program if you don't, but it'll give you the wrong answer if you don't initialize. And it's also the opposite of bad programming. It's good programming. Okay. Right. I've shown this to you already, so let's just have a look at it again. Remind yourselves, #10 is a way of putting the code on a new line. In your output, sorry, not the code, the output onto a new line. Okay. Right. A variable has local or non-local scope. So this is what we've done today. It's a bit of a weird question you're asking there. Can I count be an array? And you can use an array of counters. So you can have a whole lot of counters in an array. Okay. This isn't, well, the explanation is in the Dandelion book. #9 I'm doing tomorrow, Poppy. Okay, so the explanation is in the Dandelion book, but this is just all my stuff that I've put together. Okay, so we talk about the scope of a variable. If a variable is local, it has local scope. If a variable is non-local, then it has global scope, which means all the parts of your program can access it. Okay. Then when a variable appears on both sides of the gets the value of symbol, yes, you can use #10 in rich edits. It must be initialized. So this is the important one. If I've got my variable on both sides of this, I have to realize it's got to be initialized. And #10 puts the output onto the next line. Okay. Right, here's our links. This is the link if you can afford it, to purchase the eBook of the Dandelion Delphi book. Okay. This one here is where you can download the data. Okay, I don't know what you're asking, Vian. Seems like a bit of a silly question. The data for the eBook, which I will be working on again. Okay. All right, somebody else now needs to be kicked off, I see. And you can go to the Africa Teen Geeks website to download these PowerPoint presentations. And as far as I know, eventually, well, you can go onto the website to go and find the stuff. You can't get to it. Okay. Just if you go to africateengeeks.co.za, I know it's there. Okay, I've seen them. So just go to the site and look for it. Scroll down to the bottom. Okay. Right, guys. And what are we doing tomorrow? We're spacing our output in the rich edit. So somebody asked about #9. We're going to be doing a #9. We're going to be looking at using constants as opposed to variables. And then we're going to just have a look at a few things as we have been up until now for answering exams and test questions, how to read the questions and interpret what you're being asked. Okay. All right. I'm glad to see that you're trying to, okay. All right. That's a private message. I don't need to read that out. Right, guys. Thank you. Please don't forget all the social media tags. Okay. Keep your questions and I'll see you again same time tomorrow. Hey? Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.